Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to what is being talked about in terms of the relations between India and Canada, and also in what the Deputy Foreign Ministers of Canada has told a parliamentary meeting that the Home Minister of India, Amit Shah, is allegedly behind the involvement of the attack on Sikh separatists and also the murder in November last year. And this is, of course, something very important, and it was first reported to the Washington Post. And this is something that has been confirmed by the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister as well. And so we're going to be taking a look at what that means and what sort of an allegation or the gravity of the situation is at the moment. Because while there has been a lot of events that have taken place since November last year with the expulsion of diplomats on both sides, and of course the allegations by the Canadian government in terms of involvement of the Indian government, it of course brings into question the entire relationship of both the countries, and then of course India's credibility in the international community, particularly after the attack in the US as well on a Sikh national in the US. That was something that the US also talked about in terms of an ex-intelligence officer being behind that. And of course investigations have reportedly been carried out by India, but not much has been done about it, or there hasn't been any concrete steps taken. But what does that mean in terms of the actual relationship and the impact that creates on the international front, and whether or not this will seriously impact the relationship that countries like the US and Canada have with India, and whether or not an outright allegation of a home minister of a country is also an outright allegation on the premier of that country, and what that means in terms of this attack, and what sort of way forward will then be taken by Canada, and of course the relationship that will continue. That is going to be our focus in the first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visit to Saudi Arabia, where he's of course attending the investment summit. And this is important also in terms of the sidelines and the meetings that were carried out with regards to the Saudi Crown Prince, and of course how the Premier also talked about this very important relationship that Pakistan enjoys with Saudi Arabia, and in the ways that the country has helped us move forward in terms of the IMF program, and then of course engagement in terms of bilateral trade and investment as well. He also thanked the Saudi Crown Prince for the hospitality that was extended to him, and also in terms of the way that the relationship has progressed, and of course what all the kingdom has done for Pakistan. This is going to be important, particularly in terms of how we move forward in terms of the economic situation of the country, and how Pakistan would like to see its bilateral engagement moving forward. This is going to be what we're going to discuss and to take a look at, particularly in terms of a focus on the economic relations between both the countries, in our second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online by our guests, Major General retired Mr. Zahid Mahmood, who's a senior analyst, and former ambassador Mr. G.R. Baloch. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. Ambassador Saab, I'll start with you in terms of how you view the current situation. This is something that we've seen, of course, since last year being talked about, and very openly we've seen that the Canadian government has talked about previously also with regards to the Indian government's involvement. But now, of course, this is something that has been openly discussed as well, with a particular name coming up, and that is, of course, the involvement of the Home Minister Amit Shah. And this is important, particularly when we take a look at how serious is this on a whole between two countries for an action to be taken that is a murder on the soil of a different country, and then the national of a different country, and for that country to then accuse the Home Minister of the other country to be behind that. So I want you to take first to help us understand the gravity of the situation and how serious this is in terms of sovereign relationship.
Yes, Sana, this is a very serious diplomatic crisis between India and Canada. In fact, earlier there were accusations, but now, after the expulsion of Indian diplomats, including the High Commissioner of India from Canada, indicates that the crisis has really reached a crescendo. And in fact, in the diplomatic technical terms, this indicates a rupture of diplomatic relations between the two countries. whatever pretensions India might have of being a very important country for the Western world, and in fact, India has been projecting itself as to be the newfound darling of the Western world, but this definitely has marred its image because I think it's going to impact its credibility as a reliable partner, and especially those initiatives that the West had taken, and especially America, US, had taken in sharing intelligence, in sharing technical know-how, especially in the military matters. So I think there will be a rethink about it, whether it should be done or not. Now, coming specifically to Canada, you see, the worst was that rather than being open and producing itself for clearing its position, India went on the offensive. In fact, several Indian leaders said that the Canadian Prime Minister was accusing or playing this drama for political purposes, which was because their narrative was that his probably political fortunes were dwindling, and he wanted to strengthen them by closing up to the Sikh community. As we know that Sikh constitute about 2% of the Canadian voters and are very influential. In fact, much more. Their influence is much more than 2%. In fact, there's a Sikh leader who is potentially anytime become a prime minister of Canada. Once a Sikh was defense minister of Canada. So I think Sikhs have the Sikh diaspora in the Northern America, especially Canada and the US, are very, very influential. They're all very well educated. They're very well connected, and they have a cause, and and there are reasons for them to project and promote their cause, whether somebody likes it or not. But the fact that a state takes this extraordinary, illegal, and in violation of what is called the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, that is, when the diplomats are accredited to a country, they sort of enjoy certain immunity. But now what has happened with the expulsion, that it has been now exposed, or at least now it is very clear that the Indian diplomats had violated their immunity and had committed such crimes, including the murder of innocent Canadian citizens, just because they raised their voice against certain policies of the Indian government. So I think it's a very, very serious question on the credibility of India, on the kind of policies that they are following, not only in Canada, but I think there is a pattern emerging of what is called now the state terrorism across the globe. So I think this much for your first question, then we can proceed later. Yes, Sana.
Right. Absolutely. Jaiprakash, I also want your take on this, particularly when we talk about the fact that Pakistan, of course, has put forward a lot of evidence and information regarding state-sponsored terrorism by India as well. And this is something that has taken place in Canada. And we also have an incident that took place in the US. And this is something that countries such as the US and Canada are even saying now. And so I want your take on what that means, particularly in terms of action against India that can be taken, and how that also reflects on the seriousness or credibility of information and evidence that Pakistan is also sharing. Is that even relevant to the equation at the moment? Is that something that is being considered even behind the scenes in terms of engagement with India?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sana, for inviting me. I think this is very important. We need to understand that whatever is coming from Canada and whatever is coming from United States now, whatever actions Indians are taking against the Sikhs, this is probably will bring more facts about us, about a country which is a Hindutva policy followers now, and characters like Modi, characters like Amit Shah, Ajit Doval, and you can see even now that Foreign Minister Jay Shankar, he is also getting into the same mode, you know. So this is a pure Hindu approach, Brahman Hindu approach, which is now being seen by the entire world. Of course, it will put weight to the case which Pakistan has already presented, and we have already given so many of dossiers. But of course, now it depends upon the forces whom we want to make understand that whatever India is doing to the humanity and whatever the terrorism which they are exporting to other parts of the world. So, of course, now one thing which is coming from Canada is that they are using the forum of the Five Eyes. These are the European countries like UK, Australia, New Zealand, America, and they have their intelligence structure where they have taken this case and they're showing whatever is being done as a state policy. Now, even the topic of this, this standing committee hearing which was there in Canada, it's very interesting. It's electoral interference and criminal activities in Canada by agents of India. So very clearly they have identified that the criminal gangs, like we are hearing the names of the Lawrence Bishnoi, his gang, who is already in India. So his gang is involved in the criminal activities, and they're targeting the Sikhs in Canada. So there is an indictment in United States court about the Yadav, then the Nikhil, the other agent, which has been brought to United States, probably, if I'm not wrong, from Switzerland or Czech Republic, probably. So he has been brought to United. So there is a lot of evidence. Now, even in this case, in the Canadian case, India is denying that they just wanted to blame India and they want to tarnish the Indian image, So they have already discussed, they have, if you understand that they have attempted 6 times to share evidence, then Canadians were supposed to be sending an intelligence sharing team to India, and because of the administrative and logistics issues, technical issues, they have stopped that mission to come to India. Then they have tried to meet them in Washington, the Indian National Security, and the Indians, they did not even showed up there. So they have been avoiding to receive this evidence, but it is confirmed that this evidence, which has the text and conversations of the Indian raw and senior official, and now they have said that they have the evidence about the minister, Amit Shah. So they have already given those evidences to India. But Canadians were expecting that they will have a cooperative mode the way they have cooperated, they are cooperating with the United States, and in cooperative mode they will extradite, or they will take some actions against these individuals and the gangs. But they have not seen that cooperative mode, though India, as always, they have been uncooperative, and they went into the denial mode, and they started blaming Canada on this. So Canada has the evidence. A few days back, I was listening to the police chief, Mike. He was on a national TV on Canada, and he very confident said that we have the evidence. Now, because this case is in the Canadian courts, so he might not be sharing those evidence to the public. Now, going to the Washington Post, these were the activities which I have told you, that 6 times they have tried to meet their officials, then the security advisor, then the Prime Minister himself at G20, he gave evidence and he spoke to Mr. Modi. But Indians denied. So this is their culture, because in the hybrid war and in this war on terrorism and proxy wars, the plausible deniability is the center of gravity of such operations, So they do the actions and then they deny. So this is their adopted policy. So they gave the evidence, and once they denied, then they were trying to ask India that they can allow the Canadian authorities to investigate, to investigate from those diplomats who were in Canada, or you call them back, or you inquire at your end and stop these criminal gangs and all that, and stop this policy. But nothing was done, And then after that, they decided to go through Washington Post, because they were already doing a story on it, and they wanted to tell the world, and especially the US, that what all is happening. That's how they went to the Washington Post. It was, they gave a lot of chance to Indians to tackle this, what all has happened. But as you know, the Indians are like this. So Pakistan, Canada, now you coming from US, Sikhs, what is happening in Kashmir. So there's a lot of cases. How it will impact the world, it depends, because it depends upon those big powers, because you know the acceptance of India at this moment, because of their different strategies, Indo-Pacific and all that. So how it will fit in their designs. But they have gone aggressive against Canada, and they have been very apologetic and very sensible and moderate about on their approach towards United States. So this is what India is, but I'm sure now this policy cannot go longer for a very long time, and time will come, you know, whatever atrocities they are doing, the genocide in Kashmir and genocide against Sikhs, and there's a lot of history. The people like soft voices who were giving voice to the Khalistan cause, like Sidhu Moosewala and another, there was an actor, you know, and then the activities after this agriculturist movement about in Punjab. So they have eliminated 6 youngsters also, the young leaders also in India. So this cannot go for a very long time, and I'm sure that this will reach to a logical conclusion.
Right, absolutely. That is, of course, the hope. Faisal, I want your perspective also in terms of the fact that, of course, there's a lot of evidence that the Canadian government has, and I understand that it cannot be shared. And this is, of course, a very serious thing that they're naming. So they're bound to have that evidence. But in terms of what has been talked about regarding the Home Minister, I want your take in terms of how directly it impacts Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the fact that, of course, the Home Minister is part of his team and his government. And the fact that when we have the Canadian government name a Home Minister of India, what does that mean specifically when this will proceed further, and if the evidence also is taken to courts and the investigations and actions are then being carried out by Canada, what it means in terms of possible consequences that can happen with regards to Mr. Modi.
So now let me be very clear on this, and I'll be very open. I have been obviously, you know, looking whatever the evidences were being given and all. And one thing is for sure, I think right now the most happiest man on the earth would be Modi himself, because in recent past he started looking at Amit Shah as someone who is a prospect leader for the future. And here is Canada providing that kind of opportunity to them. Canada very smartly played with the whole game, and now they have come up with this option for India. Rather than calling it state terrorism, which was being exported by India, and everyone knows that. Everyone knows that it is the state terrorism, not an individual sitting in the government doing it, but the whole government doing it, the whole country is doing it. Why I say this? Because when we talk about, exporting terrorism in Pakistan, nobody said a word. We have been giving dossiers after dossiers, dossiers after dossiers to the West, and nobody said a single word about it. When we talk about, people getting, of course, murdered in Pakistan, nobody said a single word about it. And when we keep on talking about ISIS Khorasan being, invested by India, then TTP being invested by India, BLA, BLF getting invested by India, nobody says a single word about it. But when suddenly we talk about somebody getting killed in of course, Canada, and somebody being a part of a plan to be killed in America, that's when it starts. And I tell you one thing, if the things were as simple as they were being shown by the Indians, and as simple as the Western world wanted it to be, then these cases wouldn't have been highlighted at all. Why I say this? Problem started when Ukraine crisis, during the Ukraine crisis, suddenly we saw that India wanted to secure a position, a very neutralized position in that, whereas of course the Western powers wanted India to be taking a side of Ukraine at that time, and they didn't do it at that time at all. And that's when the problem started, and Western powers, they just wanted to simply squeeze India a bit. Otherwise, it's the very India whose Prime Minister is someone who was once considered in the West as a butcher of Gujarat. Still, he was accepted by the Western powers as a Prime Minister of India, and they said nothing about it. More than 2,000 Muslims, they were butchered in Gujarat, and Nobody said a single word. And here it is, only basis of this murder that took place and the plan that was shaping up in New York, they have come across just to squeeze India. Why I say this? Because suddenly India wanted to show that they have the neutral position. Here we are, when India saw that all of these Western powers, they are squeezing India a bit. Suddenly we saw India giving more worth to SCO, more worth to BRICS at the same time. And when Western powers are looking at this as another threat from the Indian side, because India is playing very smart game in the diplomatic world. And what they have given a sort of indication to the Western world, that if you want to squeeze us, then we have our ways to get out of it. If you want to send us to the closed end, a street that has no outgoing, then you yourself will be creating a door to get us out. And that is where they have created this Amit Shah door for them. They are going to get them out of it. I think right now we need to highlight it again and again, rather than calling it a group of people involved in India, or a sort of Hindutva ideology that is involved in India. It's India as a state that is promoting terrorism. It's India as a state that is exporting terrorism, be it Britain, be it Australia, be it Canada or America. They are constantly sending in their ideology, so that over there it's a chaos in terms of society. They want to, of course, marginalize Muslims, especially Pakistanis out there. They want to marginalize Khalistanis out there. They want to marginalize all of them, and they want to create a beast called Hindutva ideology in all of the important capitals of the world. That's what I'm trying to say, that this shouldn't be considered as something which is going to be a huge factor of embarrassment for the Indians in coming day. Rather than, very smartly, the Western powers are giving them a way out of this crisis.
Right. And why is that?
The only reason is that at this hour, they don't want India to go towards BRICS, to go towards SCO and align itself with the other countries. Rather, they want to have India stay with them, stay with the Quad, stay with whatever it is doing as, posing a challenge to the Chinese. And I know, everyone knows this, that India can never challenge in terms of economy to put a challenge against the Chinese, but at least they can slow the progress of China. This is what the whole plan is. And that is why Western powers still, they want to keep India in the region, a check on China, and that is why they're giving them a way out.
Right. And Farokh, I want your perspective on that as well, whether or not that truly has so much weight and significance, that's the prime force that's driving this entire dynamic that India has with the West, and whether or not these attacks and the allegations that the Canadian government has put forward is a face-saving for India, or is it really something that is destroying the credibility of the government?
Thank you very much, Sana, for the question. I think before I start, I wanted to actually slip in a kind of corrigendum, right? And I'm sure that when General Saab was speaking, it was a generic comment, but I wanted to correct when he said that Brahmin Hindus might, mentality. I just wanted to point out, because there are Brahmin Hindus in Pakistan as well. They are our brothers and sisters. So my humble submission is that it actually typifies Hindutva mentality, not Hindu mentality, right? Now let us also talk about whatever was said earlier. I think it is a matter of perspective. One, Amit Shah poses no threat to Modi. Modi has charisma. Amit Shah's entire charisma can be fitted into a teaspoon. So I don't think that there is any comparison at all. Of course, there was a talk about succession of Modi, because there is this belief that eventually it is said next year he's turning 75, so he might actually want to take a back seat. And then there is a plan that he might later on be installed as the president. In the meanwhile, who is going to succeed him? It could be Amit Shah. But the problem is that Amit Shah, and I agree that Amit Shah and Modi don't agree on many things. And Amit Shah has become a problem for many reasons. But I am not going to say that Amit Shah is an excuse given to the West, or West is finding that excuse. I think that the story is very different. It is true that Canada played its card very cleverly, because immediately when last year Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister, actually came on record and accused India of doing this. At that time, immediately the responses that came from India were that he is getting unpopular, and perhaps because of politics, he wants to appeal to the Sikh community, and that's why, by the way, Indian community, which is not Sikh, perhaps Hindus, and Sikh community are more or less the same number in Canada, right? So it belies any kind of logic that he would actually appeal to one side and not the other. But at that time, this was the attack that was lodged. So what happened? After that, they have actually uncovered another very interesting plot, and that is to replace Trudeau with the opposition. So with that everything out and open, now India does not have that kind of leverage. I agree on one thing, that we keep on looking at the picture. Remember a still picture of a person standing in the middle of a stair. You can't tell. Some people will think that he is climbing, and the others will think that he is dismounting. So at this moment, whether it is escalation or beginning of a de-escalation, that has to be looked into. My point is this SEO business and looking towards China, that policy is essentially dictated by a very different, dynamic, especially Thaw with China. The day Thaw began and there was an interaction between President Xi and Prime Minister Modi, the next day, I think, Adani opened his business in China also. So that is a different dynamic, and I'm not going to go there. What I want to actually point out is whether the allegations on Amit Shah or against Amit Shah, are they correct or not? And I would say that since 2002, we have been committing the same mistake of seeing Modi as the emblem of everything that might be going on, or perhaps Hindutva as a monolith. That is not the case. There are many dynamics that are going on, right? Amit Shah and Modi came together. But Modi has always been, before he was a politician, known as the big idea guy, a person who has some kind of vision, who can work with various people, and then he introduces policies. Who does minion work on the streets? It is Amit Shah. So in 2001, Modi comes to power. Then we see Gujarat violence, but Modi was the chief minister who was in public eye. He could not actually go out and do something of that sort personally. And the police was not directly actually raping or pillaging or burning people. So who was doing it? All of a sudden, Amit Shah's stars actually start shining. And then the whole story has, Sana, been directly proportional to Amit Shah's desperation. For example, in 2014, Modi wins, and Amit Shah is installed as the minister, first head of the party. But what happens? In 2013, when Muzaffarnagar violence took place, Sana, at that time, Modi was facing nothing. Who was facing all the cases for petty murders and all? Amit Shah. And had Amit Shah not become a federal minister, at that time, he would have most likely gone to prison. So what happens immediately? Elections take place. Before that, Muzaffarnagar violence takes place. Then elections happen, and finally, presto, Amit Shah is in a position where you cannot prosecute him. Similarly, now the desperation, this succession bit, if Modi indeed is going to take a back seat, it is still an open question. But then RSS and BJP would want somebody who is actually salt of the earth, actually from RSS system, or somebody who is actually from the populist side, right? Somebody who has charisma. And we just agreed that he does not have the charisma, right? So what happens? At that time, all these things start happening. Faisal mentioned all the Western countries, but Pakistan is also one of the examples. Bangladesh is one of the examples also, where people were slain, some were reported, some were not. So, and then look at who is the tool or the, utility that is being used. that is Lawrence Bishnoi. Where is he right now? He is incarcerated. Where? In Gujarat. So where does Amit Shah come from? Gujarat. Don't be fooled by his name. He is not a Christian, right? Lawrence Bishnoi is a name that he has given to himself, but he is head of a Hindutva hardline, terror kind of group or some kind of gang. And that person has been actually involved, or his organization has been involved, from Moosewala to so many other murders, even attack on Salman Khan recently.
Right.
And Lawrence Bishnoi was, certain other states actually called for him to be presented in those courts. And the Interior Ministry or Home Ministry could easily have allowed that, transfer from one jail to another so that another court can hear. Happens all over the world, but the Home Ministry turned it down. So who is actually protecting Lawrence Bishnoi? It is essentially Amit Shah. So it all fits. I understand that we can blame Modi for a lot of things. We can go for Ajay Doval, blaming Ajay Doval as well. But this time, I think that because of the organogram of Hindutva, Amit Shah is calling all the shots, and he is a responsible director.
Right. We're now going to be taking a look at our next segment, and Ambassador Saab and Judge Saab, I'll also take your perspective on that. Particularly when we talk about the current situation, it's important also to understand the dynamics between the kingdom and Pakistan. And Ambassador Saab, your take first in terms of the relationship. We understand how significant and historic and important it is, but specifically in the current times, in the way that we are engaging with the economy at the moment, how significant can that contribution really be, and what does that mean when we can quantify it, not just in terms of numbers, in terms of what comes in the country, but also in terms of the way that we can move forward with true trade and investment and a build-up of prosperity in the country?
Sana, this visit by the Prime Minister was, I think, in the context of participation in an investment conference. It was targeted towards future investments and towards that vision that Saudi Arabia has of 2030. And also what he took along with him, and which I gleaned from his statement, was major pillars of our present vision for Pakistan's economy and Pakistan's society is that we must embrace new emerging technologies, especially AI, in sectors which are so vital for Pakistan, which is education and health. And this is what exactly the Prime Minister in his statement articulated, which was, I think, very much aligns with our national priorities. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, specifically the investment, obviously now I think a new relationship in terms of investment has been pronounced by both the countries, that it's not just give us 1 billion and please give us 2 billion. It is about a win-win, some kind of engagement where they gainfully invest in Pakistan and get a return which acts as an incentive for further investment. And of course, it also aligns with Saudi Arabia's own strategy of diversification of its economy in the post-carbon era, because after all, if ultimately the world does give up on the hydrocarbons as a fuel, definitely the economy of these countries which are dependent and which are oiled by their oil will have to find new avenues. And I think the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been engaging his country, visualizing and in fact giving new vision for his economy and for his country, where it becomes a hub of investment not only within the country but beyond. And I think we have seen Saudi delegation come to Pakistan a week before the visit of the Prime Minister. I think probably 27 or so MOUs were signed, and diverse fields were included in it, including mining, communication, agriculture, health, education. So I think there is a new, in my view, perspective on translating this historical and strategic relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Earlier, it has been all security related, all kind of strategic, geostrategic related issues. But now it is, as we also say, that we give precedence to geoeconomics. So I think this is that change in perspective of the two countries, which would, I think the Prime Minister in his endeavor and in his speech in Saudi Arabia, I think alluded to that we need to really translate this strategic partnership into tangible cooperation in fields which are emerging fields, which are necessary for transformative strategy of the two countries. And this can only take place if we have technology, if we have AI, and all that which is required. And of course, I would like to mention that this is important for Pakistan because of what we have as a human resource, the youth that we have, youth wealth that we have. And those youth are pretty enterprising. Since I think you probably know that I teach at a university in Karachi. And I mean, if I look at the energy these youth, young boys and girls have, you just need to give them opportunity, give them direction, and then really they can aim for stars. So definitely we have the potential. Yes, Sana.
Right, absolutely. General Syed, I want your perspective on this as well, particularly when we talk about the perception of this relationship also, whether or not this is important, especially when it comes to how the people of Pakistan look at this relationship, whether it's something purely in transactional terms or also beyond that in terms of an equal partnership between the two countries, and also particularly in terms of the way that we've seen it grow and expand over the years with the leadership of the Crown Prince. What aspects can still be looked into further beyond the economic realm as well, such as security cooperation as well, considering that Pakistan, of course, is dealing with a lot of those issues?
Yes, Tana, I'm sure that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia can play a very pivotal role considering the present crisis. But quickly, let me thank Matafi Saab for applying correction on my Hindu Brahman. In fact, when I was talking about the Sidhu Moosewala, so he had a lot of songs about the Brahman Samraj. So I was referring to that. I have a lot of respect for my brothers who are living in Pakistan. So probably in the flow I spoke, but thank you very much for applying this correction. Now coming over to Pakistan-Saudi relationship, we have a great relationship as far as security is concerned. Since 1982, we have the deployments and we have a lot of, training staff and a lot of security cooperation with the Ministry of Defense as well as Ministry of Interiors with Saudi Arabia. So it's been, with regards to the defense cooperation, we have a long strategic partnership, and Saudi Arabian military, they have always preferred Pakistani trainers and Pakistani. Then we had deployments in the Kuwait war as well, in the previous wars as well. So for the two holy mosques, Pakistan has no terms and conditions to protect that. And inshallah, if in future, if there is any threat to these two mosques, so without getting into what kind of relationship we have, Pakistan will go to any extent to support Saudi Arabia. Now coming over to the present situation, Pakistan, if the confidence between Pakistan and Saudi officials and the military and the leadership, especially the king, if they are in a very good terms, we can create an environment where we can improve the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And especially this will help in a long way, and it will be a very strategic help to the people of Palestine and the genocide which is going on. So maybe on the sidelines, maybe Pakistan and Saudi Arabia can craft a strategy where the relationship between these two powers in this area, that can be improved. And then Saudi Arabia, in Saudi Arabia, they have a lot of confidence in the Pakistan defense industries and defense cooperation. So we have the opportunity where we can help Saudi brothers, where we can reinforce them, where we can improve their technology, plus the equipment which we produce here in Pakistan, and I'm sure that will help them a long way. Instead of spending so much of money, whenever the Middle Eastern countries are in trouble, especially countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, so there are so many actors and players who come in and they earn and try to extract a lot of money from our Saudi friends and brothers. So they know their ways. They create a situation of a different war kind scenario, and they create a situation where they create a threat to our Middle Eastern partners and friends, and then you understand what I'm hinting at. They'll try to sell a lot of stuff. So here the confidence between the two states, we have very good relations, and all of a sudden we have an incident or some kind of a poor politics in Pakistan. We start try to become the leaders of the Ummah and something like that. So it is time to create and to establish a very good relationship with Saudi Arabia, because there are time-tested friends. And in Pakistan, the masses have a special affiliation and respect for the Saudis. You can't ignore Saudi Arabia in any way. So try not to be very emotional, So try to guard your own interest, try to create confidence in each other, and have a long partnership. So when the Saudis or these Middle Eastern countries, they are in trouble, they look towards you once they're out of the hot water, so then they start ignoring you. So we have to create this diplomatic interaction, has to be very extremely crafty, all right? And of course, they always look towards us. They'll respect us being a regional power and being a nuclear power. So they have this kind of a confidence that even in the bad times, once we were under sanctions and against all kinds of odds, we were able to have this nuclear power. And we have been facing our enemy, this India, for last 70 years. We have had Russians in our backyard, so we have managed them. We have managed Americans for 20 years. So Pakistan is not an ordinary country. And this is the confidence of all the Middle Eastern countries in Pakistan. So now we have to, build our diplomatic efforts and build our, give and take policy on this concept. Instead of, being extraordinary emotional, we don't need to be very emotional. We have to be very sensible.
Right. Thank you very much, General Zahid Saab, for joining us, and thank you very much, Ambassador G.R. Baloch, for being part of the discussion. Thank you, Faisal, and thank you for always being part of the debate. That's all that we have time for today, but we'll now see you tomorrow.